Welcome, everyone. Oh, there's a starter candle. Ha. We light this candle in recognition of the Temian and Mwekma Ohlone peoples, indigenous peoples, who sustained this land thousands of years before us. We honor their resilience in the face of the devastating harm brought on them by colonial settlers. And we lift up the resilience of their neighboring descendants, the Amamutsan tribal band, with whom we are now working to preserve their holy land of Eurostak and to ensure their culture can thrive once again. Our chalice lighting words come from Reverend Scott Taylor. As we light your chalices or the candle in your heart, please do put into the chat where you're lighting from, or if you're in this space, think it in your heart. We light this flame as an act of faith. Reverend Scott Taylor. We come with our doubts, worn out and worn down, wanting once again to trust, to believe that hope is not as fragile as it sometimes seems, that division is not as deep as it sometimes appears. As we light this flame as an act of faith, a reminder, a redeclaration, a rekindling of the trust, that kindness is more powerful than we know, that humility and accountability allow us to change, that together we must bend the arc of this beautiful universe toward justice.
Let us wait as the light from your chalices continues to spread. Our next music is a prayer from the Brodsky Synagogue in Odessa, Ukraine. This hymn, entitled Adon Olam, or Sovereign of the Universe, is a hymn in the Jewish liturgy and a regular part of the daily liturgy since the 15th century. The particular melody to which the text was set in this performance was composed by the 19th and 20th century composer Cantor Pinchas Minkowsky, himself from the Brodsky Synagogue in Odessa. As British Member of Parliament Claudia Webb has tweeted, the welcoming of Ukrainian refugees must compel us to welcome all refugees. That, quote, the sorrow and despair we all feel for Ukraine should be identical to the sorrow and despair we feel for war and imperialism in non-European countries like Yemen and Syria, to name just two of the far too many on every continent on the earth. May this prayer connect us all to those who are suffering and fleeing and dying through acts of war in Ukraine and elsewhere. This is Adon Olam, a prayer from the synagogue in Odessa.
Information about the recorded media played at this part of the service can be found in the description.
The words of this daily Jewish prayer are all about the Lord of the universe reigning before anything was created. When all shall end, the Lord Adonai shall still reign. I'm translating the masculine pronoun because I can't bring myself to use the masculine pronoun for the holy. But it ends with this phrase, to the Lord I commend my spirit in the time of sleep and awakening, even if my spirit leaves. The holy is with me, I shall not fear. Beloveds, for some of us, the words to that Jewish prayer, the Adon Olam, are deeply familiar. For others, they are not familiar at all. For some of us, the prayer's words in English hold rich meaning and sustenance. For others, they may not make any sense at all. Renewing faith is the theme of this month for many Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country. But what does renewing faith mean in a religion where we have so much freedom of choice and such a range of spiritual beliefs and groundings that we probably can't even agree on the definition of faith itself? Well, we know this. We are all affirmed in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we need not think alike to love alike. May every element in this service this morning bring you closer to what grounds and guides you, and to what grounds and guides this community. So welcome everyone to this service. Thank you for joining us on this adventure here at the First Unitarian Church of San Jose. If you are new or visiting, we are so glad you are here. Thank you for sharing this space with us and becoming part of this community, whether it's for a day or for the rest of your life. Here we cherish our diversities in beliefs, identities, life experiences, and we know that when we work with these beliefs, identities, and life experiences, they all become gifts that we can bring to build the beloved community. Our mission here is to make love visible in all that we say and do. So I am the Reverend Nancy Palmer Jones. My pronouns are she and her, and I get to serve this wonderful congregation as its senior minister. Joe Mosher, who's right here, who opened the service this morning, whose pronouns are they and them, serves as our director of faith formation. You've heard from our choir director, too, John Ector, who works with me and our accompanists, Diane Sychek and Chris Pasillas, whose marvelous music for gathering we heard, and many other musicians to build the music soundscape for each service. On the tech team, in the balcony, we have Drew Glover, who's our Zoom host, Madeline Morrow, who's running the camera and will host our online social hour, Bruce Halen, who's running sound, and Deborah Finzel-Alexander is shadowing, I think, a little bit of everyone so that she will be able to do these jobs too. Dear ones, Diana Meekum is our waiting room host, and we are so grateful to you, Diana, for that faithful service. Beloveds, if you need a listening ear this week, please do get in touch with Pastoral Associate for the week, Joyce Miller, whose email is in the chat, and it's also on the handout that you received, the blue handout here in the sanctuary. We know that there is so much on our minds and hearts. So there will be time later in the service to share briefly a joy or sorrow that you would like the community to carry with you. And there will be a Joys and Sorrows breakout room after the service as well. We have cause for real joy today as I get to begin an introduction to you for our new office manager, Nika Kardrich. Nika, I hope that you are spotlighted and that you can wave on the camera. Let's see here. I know Nika is with us online. And whenever we find her, even if it's in the middle of something else, that's okay. Please do say hello to Nika. I'm saving the delicious part, the full part of her introduction for next Sunday, which is another cause for joy. Okay. And another cause for joy is that next Sunday is Celebration Sunday. It's also, we're calling it Homecoming Sunday, because we're removing the cap on the number of people who can be here in the sanctuary. We encourage you to come on down. There's plenty of room. We'll be vaccinated and masked, and we'll keep a little bit of a distance between different pods, but we are open, and there'll be some live music and some beautiful recorded music, and in general, I know that you will be so happy to be back here in our beloved space if you're able, and if you feel comfortable doing that. All right, dear ones, let us take a breath. And another. Where will you find that deep grounding in yourself today? Let me invite Joe to offer the opening words.
These are the words of Howard Thurman. There is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls.
Will you please join me in saying the affirmation of this congregation, which we say in English and Spanish as a symbol of the many languages in this community and beyond and beyond. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls may grow into harmony with the divine. This do we covenant with one another. El amor es la doctrina de esta iglesia. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Habitar juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con libertad y servir a la humanidad juntos, con el fin de que todas las almas puedan crecer en armonía con lo divino. Esto es lo que pactamos unos con otros.
Hello again, everybody. I am Joe. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Director of Faith Formation here at San Jose UU. And I'm realizing that next time I'm going to put my laptop up higher so that people up there don't have me looking down like this the whole time while I'm talking. So I'll remember to do that. The story that we're going to talk about today features a woman, because Women's History Month, can't talk, because of the month that we're in. And I picked this one also because we're in awareness around African American History Month. So I wanted to do the story for both reasons. And also it ties into our theme of looking inside of us to figure out what is our truth. I don't know how to get the top and bottom to go away, but I think this will do.
Information about the story presented at this part of the service can be found in the description.
Thank you so much, Joe. I love that story of Mae Jemison listening to what we might call the still small voice that was not so still and small in her, that said, this is what I want to do, this is what I feel called to do, and not taking no for an answer, even when people with too narrow a frame of mind say she couldn't do it. So let's hear those words from Howard Thurman again. There is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, You will of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. There is something in each of us that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in ourselves. In a service at the beginning of February on Community Ministry Sunday, we shared a video of a conversation that I'd had with the Reverend Sarah Skochko about her work in Austin, Texas as a hospital chaplain. She told stories about how she lives her Unitarian Universalist faith out loud, meeting people often on the threshold between life and death, companioning families and friends after a loved one has died. I kept noticing in that conversation how she would show up face to face with everyone, even people who said some pretty terrible things to her as they lay dying. She would show up with that Martin Buber, I, thou, I see you as wholly who you are openness, and with love and compassion for the fear that that person must be feeling. She kept referring to how Unitarian Universalism made it possible for her to do that. And she kept referring to spirit, or as she says, the divine, if you will. Well, today we will hear the last 10 minutes of that conversation. This is that we didn't get to hear before. This is where she and I listen for and try to express the sound of the genuine in ourselves. We try to name what lies at our core, what gives us strength and guidance. We talk about how we connect with it sometimes, and about how we live in a both-and theological world that does not fit into neat categories. My hope is that Reverend Sarah's and my conversation opens a space for you to name and to return to what lies at your core. As the conversation begins, I ask her to talk about the long backpacking trips she takes solo in wilderness areas and national parks. Pretty soon, Reverend Sarah has some really cool things to say about any spiritual practice. Let's listen.
So I do love solo backpacking, and people sometimes ask me, oh gosh, how do you do it? I would be so scared. And my answer is like, what makes you think I'm not terrified the entire time? One of the times that I feel closest to the divine, if you will, and most, I guess, conscious and aware of my own embodiment and mortality and finiteness in the universe is when I'm in the woods and I realize, well, a tree could fall on me, I could die at any moment, right? And there's like a profound humility that comes from that, recognizing your own vulnerability, which is perhaps easier to forget when you're in a well-lit, heated house, right, in the city. And I think I've done some of my best praying while hiking. And also had these incredible encounters with other hikers, right? They're very brief and ephemeral encounters that wind up feeling very metaphorical, right? If we're thinking about, life as a journey and a path, which is a pretty Western concept, right? The linear nature of time, you wind up encountering these people and having these brief interactions that are sometimes just so loaded with blessings, unexpected blessings. And there's a lot of hiking, which is desperately boring, right? So you're just alone with your thoughts for many hours a day, which is itself a spiritual practice. I'm pretty against the understanding of religion or religious engagement as transactional and consumerist. And I think of the dedication I think we should be putting into it, those long, boring stretches of just abiding with the spirit and trying to stay open to what will come without demanding, like, all right, where's my blessing? I've been hiking for an hour and I haven't seen a single mystical blue jay, right?
Yes.
There's something
how is this feeding me right now? I'm putting in my good time and money, and
exactly.
where is this feeding me right now? Yeah.
Right. There's something that you can only learn from being very bored in your spiritual practice and sticking with it faithfully anyway. So I love hiking is definitely a spiritual practice of mine.
I love the way that your theology and your spiritual practices are weaving through this conversation. I mean, I was going to ask much earlier, how you identify theologically, and I will ask that question. Although, from what you've said, we're getting a feeling for what that might be. So say more about that, how you identify theologically, if you have to check a box on one of those surveys that we take as Unitarian Universalists sometimes.
So I don't believe in anything supernatural. In some ways, I guess I'm a skeptic. My skepticism is rooted in a love and appreciation and reverence for the universe that it is, right? There are two ways of doing skepticism, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And one is open-hearted, and one is not. So I don't believe in anything supernatural, but I do converse with God as a shorthand, right? So whatever that is, and I don't know, the pervading force throughout the universe, whatever it is that unifies, whatever it is that is meaningful and beautiful, is something that I talk to quite frequently and rely on for strength and comfort, and possibly some guidance. Am I deluding myself? Maybe. That's acceptable to me.
Wow, Sarah, it is so amazing to hear somebody describe my own faith, my own theology so beautifully and so exactly. And it's so hard, I think, for some people, some Unitarian Universalists, to understand how that both and can be true. I don't believe in anything supernatural either. I sometimes ask myself, do I need to put that beautiful broken word God onto what I believe in or what I feel connected to? And the answer is, I don't know. I choose to. It is like shorthand for something so much bigger and all pervasive. So when I address my public prayers to Spirit of Life, Spirit of Love, God known by many names and beyond all naming, which I'm usually using in interfaith circles, I really mean all of that. I feel that there is something like the palpable sense of the interconnected web of all existence. Almost like the strands of that web are veins or arteries through which this Spirit of life and of love flows in us, among us, beyond us. And it is something that I can address. It may be that I'm addressing my deepest, innermost intuition and vision, but that I can't access without getting really still, without getting my ego or personality or habits of thought out of the way, and that practice of that kind of prayer or request is one of the ways in which I can do that. And another way is putting one foot after the other on a hiking trail, or or pausing to take a picture of every beautiful leaf or flower or branches that I see, or something like that. Yeah.
I think, in some ways I'm functionally an atheist, right? If we were really to split hairs, but it is possible to not believe in the supernatural God or the anthropomorphized God and still have a very deep relationship with the mystery of, as you said, the Spirit of life itself, the mystery of creation and meaning, and why is it that we're all here? And for me, if I did not have that ongoing conversation with that sense of something larger, whether or not it's true, I would be walking into the emergency department every night just unequipped and empty-handed, in the face of unimaginable tragedy. And I would not be prepared in those moments.
Well, and beloveds, with the First Unitarian Church of San Jose, I know that some of you will be so thrilled to hear this theological conversation, this part of this unexpected opening up. Widening the circle is the theme of the month, and indeed that's sort of what we're doing, widening the circle about our understanding of ministry, but also in this case, widening the circle in our understanding of how sparklingly glorious and diverse the beliefs are that Unitarian Universalism can hold within its capacious arms and still direct us in similar ways in terms of how we are to live. And what I want to say to all of you all who identify as atheists is your belovedness, of course, and your gifts to us. And Sarah and I share this, that at the very least, I sometimes call myself an agnostic, and in some ways, again, I had a minister in my life, a Unitarian Universalist minister in my life, who used to say to congregants, tell me about this God that you don't believe in, because I bet I don't believe in that God either. And I think that's a good description for the kind of, if you will, I go ahead and call it theism, but the kind of theism that we're talking about. And I also want to say to you here in this community, First Unitarian, that I know also your spirit, and I know I've been privileged to get to know your spirit, and I've been privileged to get to know your sources of wonder and mystery and delight that exist in this natural world. And I just think it's interesting, the ways in which these ways of expressing ourselves connect, overlap, like the crossing of the frequencies, the radio frequencies, through our atmosphere all the time. Oh, Sarah, I could, of course, have this conversation for hours and hours and hours with you. There's so many things we haven't touched on, but
I know.
This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Reverend Nancy and First Unitarian. It was great to virtually visit you.
Thank you so much. We can't wait until that can be a very real thing. And I look forward to meeting you in the flesh, in person. Yeah. I know it will happen one of these days. Thank you, beloved friend.
So, dear ones, we call Unitarian Universalism a living tradition because our faith has roots and founding stories and inspiring ancestors and core principles and disappointing parts of our histories and not so great ancestors, and it never stops growing and changing. That big blank gold disc at the top left on our chancel represents the first source of our living tradition. There she is. That source says that you and I and people everywhere can have and do have our own direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder, of something that feels larger than ourselves, larger than our egos. Whether it's the natural world or the universe or the community of humanity and of the more than human world, or the spirit of life by any of its names in any of its forms. This disc is blank, like a mirror, because none of us can define what that experience is for each other. We just know that this experience, whatever spiritual practice gets us there, this experience can lift our spirits and set us back on course. These experiences renew our faith, like our monthly theme says. And I'm convinced that if we name them as they happen, name that this moment is holy, that this moment is filled with love with a capital L, that this moment has a bit of a something more in it, or however you want to put it, the more that we name it, then we will notice these moments more often. And when we notice them over and over, they really do begin to guide the way we live. So let's bring the camera back to me here, and let me tell you a story from last week. I go to Washington, D.C. for the Faith in Action National Network's Faith Forum 2022. Faith in Action is the national organization to which our local faith-based community organizing group, People Acting in Community Together, belongs. And darlings, I arrived there profoundly sleep deprived, thinking that I can just muscle through. But by the second day, when we have the most awesome trainings with the most spectacular teachers about how to use community organizing to make real systemic differences in this country and change people's lives seriously for the better, well, I am sitting in the front row, eager as always, and I cannot stay awake. I keep nodding off even though my hand keeps going, trying to take notes that, of course, when I wake up are totally illegible. At one point, I go stand at the back of the room thinking, well, that'll keep me awake, but I am falling asleep standing up. It is a small nightmare, this fight between my mind, my will, and my body. Looking back, in a funny way, I realized that those hours of sleepiness were not unlike the boring parts of the hike that Reverend Sarah talks about. We want this awesome, transcendent experience. We want this big change, but nothing's happening. And we just have to surrender to that. We have to wait in the middle of that disappointing reality, give up our ego, and open. I finally take myself back to my room and take a nap. Maybe that counts for that day as listening to the sound of the genuine in myself. The next day, we go out into the streets of Washington, D.C., moving from station to station like a pilgrimage, chanting and carrying our signs for voting rights and immigration rights. Between the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church and Black Lives Matter Plaza, we walk and roll in silence. 375 people moving in silence for 10 minutes. It is so simple, so ordinary, and so big. It begins to feel holy, holy, holy. Something larger than any one of us moves in us, with us, around us. A cloud of witnesses, a connection to history, a commitment to change. Spirit of life, spirit of love. We are listening for the sound of the genuine together as a community. Then, over the next day and a half, that transcendent experience becomes practical application. We drill down. We make specific asks in our meetings with our congressional representatives. We make detailed plans for the coming election season. We commit to follow through with discipline and persistence. We are wide awake. There is a movement that I experience from sleepy to open to holy to change. Beloveds, what I really want to say is this. If we here at First Unitarian commit this month to opening ourselves up explicitly to what lies at our core, to what grounds and guides us, to the times and places in all their sparklingly glorious diversity where each of us experiences mystery, wonder, love with a capital L, the quietness where the still small voice lives. If we commit to this practice of noticing these experiences every day this month, I'm convinced that we will move into this spring changed, even in the face of the hardest parts of life. If we stay true to our own version of this noticing, we'll begin to know what renewing faith really means for each of us and for this community.
Our next music is a gift from our Episcopalian friends at Christ Church Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. As the Episcopalian Church's Standing Commission on Liturgy, with the publication of their Spanish-language hymnal El Himnario, have sought to inclusively provide worship music for their Latinx congregations, much as FUCSJ similarly led the way for Unitarian congregations with the release of the Purple Hymnal just over 13 years ago, a decision was made that one of the most valuable resources that they needed and that could be produced was audio recordings of some of the Himnario. Today's selection, Al Despuntar en la Loma el Día, is by the Cuban composer Eber Romero, and part of his Liturgia Criolla. This song invites us back into one practice that opens up to that exact sound of the genuine in each of us. Back in August of 2012, this video was produced. The singers are Jonathan Garay, Sandra Montes, and Elizabeth Mihailo Esqueda, and instrumentalists, all from the greater Metro Detroit Latinx population, directed by John Repulski. The English translation of the text for the song, which is not meant for singing, is actually by former FUCSJ member Smitty Smith. As the day breaks above the hills, the countryside is filled with your joy. And we see the grasses growing as we see your glory born. And I, love, who was afraid that it would not be like yesterday, I see you here like always, in my life and in my being. The sun on the horizon mixes with the green coffee plantation. In the bush, the mockingbird sings. The farmyard comes back to life, and I smell the fragrant breeze, a blend of perfume and sweat. And you ask me to sing, and I sing to you, love. I should like to be that brook, pleasant and refreshing, or the rustling of your thought that is heard in the palm grove, like the crowing of a rooster, like the warbling of the thrush. My voice rises in the wind. Oh, love, for me to sing. This is Al Despuntar en la Loma el Día.
Information about the recorded media played at this part of the service can be found in the description.
Oh, you can tell how much I love that song. A blend of perfume and sweat. Isn't that great? I should like to be that brook, pleasant and refreshing. Here I am, ready to sing. Dear ones, this is the moment when we carve out a space in our service so that we might give something more back if we are able today, if we're so moved. So Drew will put up on the screen and into the chat the ways in which we can make a donation here to the ministries of this congregation. And you can go to our website, as a matter of fact, and find the donate button up on the upper right-hand corner. Click on that. It'll give you a drop down, a whole page, I think, of menu. And you can enter an amount there for the Sunday collection. Or you can text a dollar amount. It's not there, but it's in the chat. It's on your piece of paper, your blue piece of paper here in the sanctuary. It's in the chat for you online. Text your dollar amount to the Vanco number if you have that set up in your phone. It's really easy. Just text, $100, $100. Just kidding. Because I am just kidding because your very presence here is already a gift. So if this is a day when a financial gift is not where you are moved or capable of going, please know that you are contributing to our life, our energy as a part of this community already. Thank you, Drew. I do want to remind everybody about Celebration Sunday again. If you'll stay for just a moment after the benediction, you will hear about Celebration Sunday next weekend, March 13th, and the party that follows it. We're calling it our Homecoming Sunday as well. We're removing the cap on the number of people here in the sanctuary. We have 24 people here today, so there's plenty of room, and we cannot wait to see you. There's one more thing I want to lift up at this moment because it's also about giving, and that is there is a Faithify campaign. Faithify is a Unitarian Universalist way of creating a kind of a GoFundMe through UUism to support families fleeing war in the Ukraine. And we received the link to that Faithify campaign from our beloved friend and the former Baloch scholar, Reverend Odell Nodge. Or Nodge Odell, as they would say in Hungarian. So we are so grateful to her for that, and you will find that. It's in the chat, dear ones, but I will send it out by email as well. Now, let us make some time to share those joys and sorrows most pressing in your heart. Share them briefly but deeply so that we may carry them with you. If you feel called to speak today, you here in the sanctuary, you may come up and maybe form a line if you're able here along the side near the organ. And if you're not, I will bring the microphone to you. Please do get a candle from Ram and light the candle while the person in front of you is speaking. This keeps that flow of this sort of poem or prayer we're creating together of joys and sorrows. If you're online, please do write your joy or sorrow in the chat. And after we've heard from folks in the sanctuary, Joe will read those joys and sorrows aloud so that we are together in carrying this thing called life. Please come forward now. I light this last candle for all of those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, with the assurance that these too are held in empathy and compassion among us all. May being part of a community whose main teaching is love bring strength and resilience and hope to us all.
Our closing music today is number 298 in our gray hymnal, Wake Now, My Senses. featuring one of the most beloved melodies in all of hymnody, the Irish melody entitled Slain. To connect this song to today's message, you need only think about listening to the sound of the genuine. The lyrics of this hymn are a summation of this whole service. Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Wake now, compassion. Give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Wake now, our vision of ministry clear. Brighten our pathway with radiance here. Mingle our calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care. Listen then to the power and the wisdom of the sound of the genuine, coming from a community collectively committed to making love visible in all that we say and do. I am pleased and blessed to be joined by Bev Clifford, Meredy and Bruce Halen. We are accompanied by Chris Pacius. The lyrics will be posted on the screen, or if you're in the sanctuary, you may follow along in hymn number 298 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in spirit, whatever that might mean for you, and let us sing, Wake Now, My Senses.
Benediction. There we go. For our benediction, you may rise in spirit and again in any way that feels right to you. We won't be taking hands with each other as we used to do. And it is good and right to receive these words in whatever way feels right to you. For our benediction, The words of the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of our shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. We are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be. And here we are reborn, forged by a greater courage. Let us move from this place, encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead. Amen. Salam. Shalom. Ashe. Namaste. Ishtan Adjon. Sat Sri Akal. And blessed be.